Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story sounds almost unbelievable, but the evidence, timelines, and quiet shifts in global power all point to one uncomfortable conclusion for the Kremlin. Kim Jong Un may have fooled Vladimir Putin. What began as a public display of unity, weapons deals, and anti-Western bravado may actually have turned into one of the most skillful geopolitical maneuvers of the decade. This is not a simple tale of friendship or betrayal. This is a story about leverage, survival, miscalculation, and how a smaller, isolated state learned to play a global power at its own game. To understand how Kim fooled Putin, we need to rewind and look at the moment Russia's strategic position began to weaken. When the war in Ukraine stretched longer than expected, Moscow's military, industrial machines started to show cracks. Ammunition shortages became harder to hide, sanctions began biting deeper, and Russia urgently needed partners willing to ignore Western pressure. This was the moment North Korea stepped onto the stage, smiling for cameras, rolling out red carpets, and offering exactly what Russia needed most: massive stockpiles of Soviet-era artillery, shells, and rockets. On the surface, it looked like a win-win deal. Russia would receive ammunition to sustain its war effort. North Korea would receive food aid, fuel, diplomatic protection, and possibly access to advanced military technology. The images were powerful. Kim Jong Un standing next to Vladimir Putin, touring space facilities, inspecting weapons, laughing, and projecting an image of unbreakable alliance. Western media framed it as a dangerous axis forming against global stability. Putin appeared confident. Kim appeared grateful, but behind the optics, the balance of power was quietly shifting. Kim Jong Un did not enter this relationship out of loyalty. He entered it out of calculation. North Korea has survived for decades by mastering one skill better than almost any other state: extracting maximum benefit from minimum commitment. Kim understood something crucial that Putin either underestimated or ignored. Russia needed North Korea more than North Korea needed Russia. That single fact changed everything. From the very beginning, Kim negotiated from a position that looked weak on paper but was strong in reality. North Korea's ammunition stockpiles were old, but they were abundant and compatible with Russian systems. Russia could not quickly replace them elsewhere. China was cautious, Iran was limited, and domestic Russian production was under strain. Kim knew this. So instead of rushing shipments, North Korea reportedly staggered deliveries, creating a dependency loop. Each shipment kept Russia going just long enough, but never enough to fully stabilize its supply chain. This ensured Moscow would keep coming back. In return, Kim demanded far more than symbolic gestures. He wanted satellite technology, missile guidance improvements, submarine propulsion insights, and diplomatic shielding at the United Nations. Putin, facing battlefield pressure and political urgency, appeared willing to promise more than Russia could safely deliver without consequences. And this is where the deception deepened. Publicly, Russia hinted at cooperation in space and defense. Privately, it became clear that Moscow was cautious about transferring its most sensitive technologies. Russian elites feared empowering North Korea too much, especially in ways that could destabilize East Asia and anger China. Kim noticed the hesitation immediately, and instead of confronting it, he adapted his strategy. Rather than pushing for immediate technology transfers, Kim shifted the narrative. He focused on symbolism, photo ops, and grand statements. Each handshake, each tour, each toast allowed North Korea to project legitimacy on the global stage. Kim used Putin not just as a supplier, but as a prop. A sanctioned, isolated leader standing shoulder to shoulder with the president of Russia sent a powerful message to Pyongyang's domestic audience and to rival states. It said, North Korea is not alone, North Korea matters. Meanwhile, Kim quietly diversified his gains. Food shipments eased internal pressure. Fuel deliveries stabilized key sectors. Diplomatic backing from Russia weakened enforcement of UN sanctions. Even small changes in enforcement made a big difference for North Korea's economy. All of this came before any meaningful technology transfer had to occur. In other words, Kim started collecting rewards upfront while postponing his own biggest commitments. Putin, on the other hand, believed time was on his side. He assumed that as the war continued, North Korea would grow more dependent on Russia and therefore more compliant. This assumption proved to be a critical mistake. North Korea is accustomed to hardship. Russia, under sanctions and prolonged war, was not. As months passed, Western intelligence began noticing something unusual. North Korean shipments did not always match Russian expectations. Quality issues were reported. Some ammunition was outdated or unreliable. Russia accepted it anyway because it had little choice. At the same time, North Korea accelerated its own weapons testing. Missile launches became more frequent. Satellite tests continued. Each test suggested technological improvements that raised eyebrows among analysts. Here's where the illusion of control began to collapse for Moscow. Kim Jong Un was strengthening North Korea's strategic capabilities faster than Russia was strengthening its own position. And he was doing it without fully delivering what Putin thought he had secured. The biggest shock came when North Korea's diplomatic behavior started diverging from Russian interests. Instead of fully aligning with Moscow's global messaging, Pyongyang maintained strategic ambiguity. It supported Russia rhetorically, yes, but avoided binding commitments that would drag North Korea directly into broader conflicts. Kim kept his options open, signaling to China that he was still a manageable actor, and reminding the West that escalation with North Korea would be costly. Putin, meanwhile, found himself tied to a partner who could not be pressured easily. Russia could not threaten sanctions. North Korea was already under them. Russia could not cut off aid without hurting its own war effort, and Russia could not publicly complain without exposing how dependent it had become. This asymmetry gave Kim leverage. In essence, Kim Jong Un turned Russia's desperation into North Korea's strategic upgrade program. He extracted economic relief, political legitimacy, and indirect technological momentum while giving Russia just enough to survive, but not enough to thrive. That is the definition of being fooled, not through deception in words, but through deception in expectations. Another layer of this story involves China. Beijing watched the Kim-Putin relationship carefully. China does not want a stronger, unpredictable North Korea, nor does it want a weakened Russia. Kim played into this tension brilliantly. By leaning toward Russia publicly, he reminded China of his value. By not fully committing to Russia, he reassured Beijing that he would not destabilize the region uncontrollably. This balancing act increased Kim's importance to both powers. Putin, however, lost room to maneuver. If he pushed Kim too hard, he risked losing ammunition supplies. If he gave Kim too much, he risked empowering a nuclear-armed state beyond control and provoking backlash from China and the West. Kim knew this and exploited it. Domestically, Kim framed the relationship as a triumph. State media portrayed Russia as respecting North Korea's strength and independence. There was no narrative of subservience, no hint that Pyongyang was doing Moscow a favor. Instead, it was Russia that appeared eager, welcoming, and accommodating. That psychological framing mattered deeply inside North Korea, reinforcing Kim's authority and strategic genius. Over time, the cracks in Putin's calculation became more visible. Russia's battlefield situation did not dramatically improve despite North Korean support. Sanctions pressure continued, international isolation deepened, and yet North Korea emerged more confident, more visible, and arguably more capable than before the partnership intensified. So how exactly did Kim fool Putin? Not by lying outright, but by allowing Putin to believe he was in control. Kim offered cooperation, but not dependency. He delivered assistance, but not loyalty. He accepted promises, but demanded immediate benefits. And while Putin focused on short-term survival, Kim focused on long-term leverage. This episode is a reminder that power in international politics is not just about size, wealth, or military might. It is about understanding your opponent's needs better than they understand yours. Kim Jong Un understood Russia's desperation. Putin underestimated North Korea's patience. As the world looks ahead, the consequences of this miscalculation are still unfolding. North Korea is more entrenched, more confident, and less isolated than before. Russia is more constrained, more dependent, and more exposed. And the alliance that once looked like a threat to the world may, in reality, be a case study in how a smaller actor outplayed a larger one. In the end, Kim didn't just fool Putin. He reminded the world that underestimating an isolated state with nothing to lose can be one of the most dangerous mistakes a global power can make. If you found this analysis insightful, make sure to like, subscribe, and share, because stories like this shape the future far more than headlines ever reveal.